Hi, Christmas is less than a week away, and I had an experience that related in some way to Christmas, but related in a larger way to lessons that I think can help you. And I think a lot of high capability people have experienced this same thing. So I want to talk about it. It was important enough to me. It was probably the strongest interaction I've ever had with a mentee. I could have handled it better, but he commented to me that, my life is miserable, which really struck me as odd. He's been successful in many ways, has a lot, I think, to be grateful for. And my tendency was just to say, compared to other circumstances, your life isn't miserable. But does that really help that person to say that? It's like saying, if I'm afraid of cold calling, don't be afraid. Okay, but I am afraid. So what are the better ways in which you can interact? So this was important to me that I wrote down a few things that I wanted to pass on to you that I hope will help you if you at times think this is a miserable life or this is a miserable experience. And I do want to be careful here because I don't want to single this person out. I do think a lot of people have this same experience. But because when someone says their life is miserable, they're really not saying that. What it really usually is saying is a lot of things didn't go the way I hoped they would go. I didn't have a lot of success as I thought I would. I got hurt by a lot of these things, whether that's not necessarily physical, but emotional pain. And I'm trying to make sense of it. Okay, so let's make sense of it. But that process is human, to reflect on those things, wish they didn't happen, and maybe get down as a result of them. But here's the problem. If you define your life by what went wrong, you will spend your energy explaining the past instead of using it to build the future, which is really what those lessons can or experiences can teach you. And this is where that movie that many of you may have seen, It's a Wonderful Life, about George Bailey, who's got grand plans, but he ends up staying in the town he was in because of circumstances, and then he wishes he was never born. An angel comes down who hasn't gotten his wings yet, says, well, we'll see what that would be like, and then he sees how many people he helped along the way, and it's a Christmas kind of story, but it relates to this. So in that movie, George Bailey felt that he was trapped. He thought he missed chances. Sound familiar? He thought that other people got breaks that he did not. But what he didn't see or couldn't see was the impact he had on others. And that's true for you, I bet, as well. In his case, the businesses he saved, the families he helped, the people who depended on him. But he was measuring his life with what he didn't get and not what he was responsible for, not what his actions have created. And that's a shift I want to have you think about. A strong why does not explain only pain. A strong why assigns responsibility. And if you, as this person I talked to, had a strong faith, but faith does not just say things happen for a reason. Faith also says that you are entrusted with something because they happened. How can you pass on what you've learned to other people? So the question is not only why something happened to you. The real question is, given what I have been through, what am I now responsible for building? Who am I responsible for helping? What problem am I obligated to fix, perhaps? What leadership am I now expected to provide? Now, when you look backwards, it can explain pain, but when you look forward, it creates momentum. And George Bailey did not need a new life. He needed a new perspective on what he had been through and who he had helped. And most of you don't need a different past. Most of you need a stronger sense of responsibility for the future. So as we head into Christmas, I want you to reflect on one simple question. The answer may not be as simple, but one simple question. If I were removed from the equation tomorrow, who would feel it? Who would that have impacted? Maybe family, maybe business partners, maybe random strangers, I don't know. But the answer will tell you more about your why than any story about what went wrong. Because it is a wonderful life, or can be, but it is not going to be a painless life. This process of business acquisition is hard. You will have rejection. You will have failure. For those that succeed, they look back on that as I did when I was going through tough times, and I said, this will be a great part of the story. And that's essentially similar to the lesson of It's a Wonderful Life, or the lesson I'm trying to pass on. So it is a life that takes responsibility for the people and problems around it that should be your goal. Look at those things that have happened to you. Realize they've made you stronger, I hope. Realize that you've learned from them. A lot of what I do in mentoring isn't because I have that much more intelligence, maybe a little bit, but not that much more intelligence than the other people that I'm mentoring. It's that I've been through experiences that I can share with them, lessons learned, so they don't need to go through that as well. And so think of it that way. You know, there was the quote, that does not kill me makes me stronger. And there's some truth in that. You do get used to adversity and how to deal with it as you do have these experiences. But probably more important is, I've been through that. Let's not waste the pain of those experiences. Let's learn from them. Let's apply them. Let's help other people. Let's build businesses and acquire. You will have experiences as you go through this business acquisition that you'll say, oh, okay, that's what I should have done differently. So let me not focus on the fact that it didn't work. Let's focus on the fact that we can learn from that and apply it. And that applies to a lot of people. So in this mentee's case, you know, I gave him some suggestions on what he could do to reframe it, some affirmations that might help him, that were not typical of the affirmations that I typically gave because of his particular circumstances. But he commented to me that it really helped him a lot. So I wanted to pass that message on. I read a lot more than I usually read or would read in these, but I wanted to make sure that I passed on what I think is a very important lesson and not forget anything in doing so. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and make 2026 a year where you put into practice what you've learned, the experiences, good or bad, and it can absolutely change your life as it has for many.